And yeah, lovely to see you all for the first full evening of the urban retreat. Yes, and today we sort of really start unfolding going deeper into the retreat and unfolding the more mythic, more interesting aspects of the retreat. And as Dharnatha said, we are very fortunate to have these tankers here today, this painting here. We're going to be rotating through the Buddhas of the mandala, the 5 Buddhas of the mandala, which will meet every evening this week. So every evening there'll be a new painting. And personally I feel very delighted about this. These paintings are from Bristol, my hometown. And I first saw them when I first came to the Buddhist Centre when I was a 14-year-old boy, some while ago now, and I haven't seen them for about 16 years. So nice to see them again. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the figure and some of the symbolism, and also why. I'm not going to talk for so long, in fact. I'm going to keep things fairly brief, not a feature-length talk. I'm going to leave some time for us to sit meditatively, sit quietly at the end, and then we'll also be finishing slightly earlier than usual at 9:30. Yeah. So I wanted to start with. I've been reading this book. The last couple of weeks, my mum got me this book for my birthday called Sapiens, a history of humans. Anybody read it? Yeah, a few. Yeah. I've just started it. Yeah. It's quite good, right? I studied history, and it's kind of like I've only read the first chapter or two, but it's largely prehistory. And this afternoon, I found out that. The oldest existing human artifact is 32,000 years old. So this is the first identifiably human object found in a cave in Germany. And anybody remember or know what it is? The oldest existing human artifact.
Toothbrush?
No, not quite. A bone? Nearly, yeah. It's a piece of ivory cut into the shape of a lion man. Yeah? A man with a lion's head. And the author says this is the oldest identifiably human object on the planet. And there are older objects, but this is the first human one. And he says, and this author's talking about the rise of humanity in evolutionary terms from apes and our other kind of ancestors in between apes and us. And he says it's identifiably human because it exhibits imagination. Yeah, so it's imagination, the capacity to imagine things that don't really exist. Yeah, this is apparently what one of the things that makes us human. So I like that, and I wasn't totally happy with it either. There's something about the tone. I'm yet to read on, so we'll see. But there's something about the tone of this chap saying the capacity to imagine things that don't really exist. Things that don't really exist. And it got me thinking about, in the context of the talk this evening, in what happens when we're imagining, what really is going on when we're imagining, when we're seeing things. Is it a flight into fantasy, things that don't really exist, or is it something else? And certainly, obviously, it's a massive topic, but more interestingly, I think it's maybe something else. So it got me thinking about how we see things, how we see things. And obviously these people saw a man with a lion's head. And obviously it was resonating with me because of the symbolism of Vairochana this evening. I'm going to be talking about the symbolism of this Buddha figure, the lions. I'll pick out a few symbols from this image of the Buddha and share some reflections I've been having on them. But first of all, the issue is seeing. And seeing is very mysterious. It's a very complex business. It's not as simple as it seems. So we see much more. We see all sorts of things. It's much more than just purely physiological mechanism, isn't it? I think the first time I realised this was as a teenager. I was at a party in France, in the countryside, and I came across a most beautiful young woman who I fell drastically in love with that evening. And we were at this we're at this party, and I think she fell for me as well. So we spent most of the evening and the night sort of just kind of gazing at each other in a way, yeah. And as you know, as you'll remember, as you know, when you fall for someone like that, they look different. They glow, yeah. That glowy, amazing, strange, different kind of seeing that can happen in special situations like this one, where you're heightened. But then what happened was, this place was in the countryside, so everyone had to come and sleep there, because everyone was drinking and people had driven. So the idea was you just slept a few hours and went home the following day. And she brought her duvet, and we were up so late that everyone else had pretty much passed out, and we couldn't find her duvet. And then a couple of friends of ours had fallen asleep, pretty drunk, in the corner of the room, and were kind of snuggled up together, just quite humorously, I thought. So she spotted the duvet cover, went over to them, and grabbed the duvet completely from them. Yeah, and it was quite harsh. Yeah, it was quite a harsh thing to do. I was sort of having a moment of, oh, look at them sleeping, and she just grabbed the duvet, and they kind of made a little, because it was hers, yeah. And it was kind of funny, but it also slightly took me back, and it was a bit harsh. But what I noticed happened is, I'm not sure, it might have just coincided with the dawn, but the glow left her. Yeah. All of a sudden, she looked terrestrial again. And it was very sudden, like that, and made me, it kind of stayed with me a little bit, actually. Kind of stayed with me, a little experience. So we don't see what's just there. Yeah, we don't just see what's just there. And this was very much the case with the Buddha. Very much the case with the Buddha. The stories of the Buddha are full of people meeting the Buddha, and normally what you hear about is what they see, first of all. Some people saw nothing. Yeah, the stories of people meeting the Buddha, even shortly after he's enlightened, and giving him a sort of, good for you, have a nice day, see you later. There's a story of people seeing the Buddha and asking if he's a god, or a demon, or an angel, or a spirit. Before he says or does anything, just overcome with his, what they see in him, yeah? There's stories of his ardent disciples meeting him in sheds and little huts that they used to stay in those wandering days, and there's conversations where people start getting into conversation with the Buddha, and the Buddha says, who's your teacher? And they say the Buddha. And he says, oh yeah, and what does the Buddha teach? And they realise halfway through that they're talking to the Buddha, which obviously tells you they didn't recognise him, So he wasn't like, flying around, or he was obviously, in some respects, a very ordinary looking. And then there's stories of people travelling a long, long way to meet the Buddha. There's one story of somebody coming a very long way to meet the Buddha. Very kind of heroic, excited young follower coming to meet the Buddha and says, I've come to see you. And the Buddha says, but you can't see me. And he said, well, I've travelled all this long way to see you. And the Buddha says, no, all you see is a bag of bones filled with excrement and pus. And or words to that effect. And then the Buddha admonishes him and says, only those who see the Dharma see the Buddha. Yeah. So he's teaching this young follower that there's obviously more. There's more to see, and that the truth of the Buddha, the truth of the person, is not just in the merely physical. Yeah, it's a very, very, very sort of strong teaching, and he makes this big statement: "He who sees the Dharma sees me." Yeah, he who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. A very famous statement that has stayed with Buddhists ever since the time of the historical Buddha. And there's also lots of accounts of other Buddhists who've never even met the Buddha seeing him through his teaching. So this is where I think, where the traditions of visionary Buddhas start to come in. Yeah. So this is where images like this have grown from. This is where images like the usual rupa we have on the shrine have grown from. Visionary images. They're not They're not imaginations of things that don't really exist. There's something more subtle, more deep, and more amazing than that. Before I come on to this particular figure, just want to sort of say something about this. Doesn't just apply to, this is a phenomenon that doesn't just apply to Buddhas. It applies to everyone. It applies to all of us. It's very common to come across the teachings in Buddhism that talk about no self, or not being someone, or not me, not mine, not self. They're quite common. You come across them fairly quickly. Yeah, you come across them on Wikipedia pretty quickly if you ask about Buddhism. But the teachings about who are we really are a little bit more esoteric in a way, a little bit more personal, a little bit more secretive, a little bit more harder to see, easier to get wrong. And it's in this vein as well that we have to appreciate what a vision of the Buddha is. So, for instance, my teacher, Sangharakshita, talks a lot about he talks more in the terms of us trying to realize that we're not who we think we are, rather than we don't have a me, or don't exist. He often talks in terms of a deeper vision of who we really are, who are true, where our true potential lies, uncovering a deeper pattern to our being, He talks in terms of realizing our particular uniqueness, individuality. And I think it's part of this inspiration, which is the reason why in this tradition we have these funny long names. So like Dharnatha says, my name's Singhamanas, is a Buddhist name. It's a very old tradition to be given a Buddhist name when a senior Buddhist recognizes that you are committed to practicing the teachings of the Buddha. And the names are unique. And the names, in a sense, are also a prophecy of who you will become when you are a Buddha. Yeah? In a way, they're a reaching in to your potential, my potential, your potential, anybody's potential as a human, to uncover a new kind of consciousness, a new kind of being, in a way. They're Buddha in potential. It's a vast, vast, deep vision, and it's the giving of the name from those seniors is a seeing. It's also a seeing. It's not just me. It's a seeing of something vast and something in potential. So I just wanted to include that side of things, because when we're considering visionary Buddhas, it's not a phenomenon that happens over there or up there or somewhere in the past. It's a deep issue about being a human and having the human potential to become a Buddha, which is the Buddha's vision. So, this is the Buddha. This figure tonight is the Buddha. What seems to have... this is a crystallized image of how Buddhists have remembered the Buddha and brought the Buddha to mind over hundreds and hundreds of years. And over in an organic way through that tradition has emerged cosmic Buddhas, Buddhas of that sort of, in a sense, transcend their particular historical context and crystallized images of the Buddha's qualities. And all the Buddhas that we'll be discovering this week are, you could say, crystallizations of different aspects of the Buddha's mind or the Buddha's being. They're personifications of the qualities of enlightenment. And we're starting tonight at the center of these five Buddhas, the center of what's called a mandala, a shape of these five Buddhas, with this Buddha Vairochana, the white Buddha. So I'll just say some things about this particular Buddha, and just to introduce him. There's vast things one could say about such symbols, really, but I'll just say a few things. So I think I'll just talk about, I'll just pick up a couple of aspects of the painting. So I'll talk a little bit about what he's holding. I'll talk a little bit about the lions, and I'll talk a little bit about his colour. So first of all, this Buddha, Vairochana, as you can see, is holding a wheel. Yeah? You can see that? Like a ship's wheel. Yeah? It's called the Dharma Chakra. It's the wheel of teaching. It's teaching the Dharma. And this relates to the historical Buddha at the moment when he first started to communicate his teaching. Yeah? So you may have already also noticed outside the Buddhist Center, when you come in there, above the gates, there's some lovely ironmongery with a wheel in the middle and deer. Yeah? You noticed that? Yeah, beautiful. It's called the Nalanda crest. Very, very beautiful. It's the same wheel pertaining to the same moment. So in that image there's deer because in the stories of the Buddha, as you probably know, after the Buddha's enlightenment, he went to start to communicate his teachings, or to try and communicate his teachings to some of his friends. And this moment in history is known as the first turning of the wheel of the teaching, the wheel of the law of the Dharma. And this is important in this image, is because this is Vairochana is known as the illuminator, and one of the things that he represents is enlightened communication. Yeah, so he's the illuminator, and he represents enlightened communication. And interesting, isn't it, that he's at the center of the mandala. So this is a very central. This is a central Buddha who is considered very, very important. So everything to do with this figure is right at the heart of what Buddhism is about. And one of these core things, the thing he holds, is communication, teaching his Dharma. You could even say that one of the things I've been reflecting on is it's almost as if the Buddha's experience isn't full, isn't consummated, isn't really fully realized until it's communicated, until it's shared, until it's passed on to another. And this is very, very. This holds some truth for us in terms of thinking about what we mean when we're trying to practice understanding, realizations, insight. Is that part of realizations, part of learning, part of wisdom and realization is the deep nature of communication, or the mystery of communicating that. Yes, communicating that in a kind of in the more ordinary channels of communication. So once we've realizing things, articulating things, very, very important in Buddhism. Learning things, talking to our friends in the Sangha, in the about what we are about our experience, about our reflections, and then also communication being very, very two-way between humans, and also between more mysterious levels of communication as well, between symbols, even the natural world, the whole mystery of communication. There's a lot to say about that. I'm going to keep moving, but the main point is that at the heart of the mandala, at the heart of the Buddhas, at the heart of the Buddhas, at the crux of the Buddha's, at the center of this mandala is a symbol of communication. Yeah, that's what this wheel symbolizes. So then we've also got the lions. Yeah, so this Buddha figure is flanked by lions. He sits on a lion throne, and it's said that the Buddha had the lion's roar, and it's said that the Buddha was fearless like a lion. Yeah, so this is one of the big qualities of the Buddha. Just like the lion in the jungle roars the loudest, so the Buddha among beings is supreme. His wisdom is supreme. And I was thinking about one of the symbols of the lions, and this quality of fearlessness that the lions have. And I was thinking, how do you become fearless, and why is a Buddha fearless? Yeah. And I think one of the core issues must be the Buddha has no anxiety. Yeah, the Buddha has no anxiety at all. No lingering sense of dis-ease in him at all. His conscience is completely at ease. It's completely free and completely pacified. He's fully aware of the workings of his heart and mind, and he's fully in control of his conduct. There's a famous moment when people come to meet the Buddha and extol him in his glory because of all his wonderful signs, saying things like, "You're amazing, Lord, because when you emerged from your mother's womb, you could walk, because you have amazing marks on your palms," and sort of supernatural things like this, which the folklore of the time thought were important. And the Buddha says, "No, I am amazing because when I'm feeling, I know I am feeling. When I am thinking, I know I am thinking. When there is sensation, I know there is sensation. When there is no sensation, I know there is no sensation." Yeah, he basically sort of turns around the situation to sort of say, this is amazing. My awareness has fully penetrated all aspects of my being, so that I am fully aware of what is going on. And when that happens, as we know from our practice of meditation, sensitivity increases, and we become more sensitive to our conduct and our interaction with others. And we also work on purifying our intentions, purifying the heart, so that love can flow more freely, so that we can be more skilled in kindly acts, morality. So for the Buddha, that's fully realized. He has a pure heart, so he's always acting out of metta, yeah, fully sensitive and aware of the others, the objective situation. So his intentions are absolutely clear, and he's also completely aware of how he's behaved, yeah, what he's doing. So what that leads to is an incredible freedom from a freedom of conscience. He knows that he's done no wrong. He knows that he hasn't, of his own accord, hurt people. He's just been beneficial. There's this whole other thing which is going to take too long to explain. So the Buddha in the jungle as the lion is completely confident because there's no anxiety. He's not worried. He's not worried that he's hurt anybody. He's not worried that he's done something wrong. He's just completely clear, completely at ease. I think that's where a good, there's probably more to it, but that's where a good deal of his fearlessness comes from. I know for me, the things that scare me most are doing the wrong thing, doing things that, and the wrong thing normally is hurting people, including myself, people I care about, our society. Doing the wrong thing is what scares me. Making decisions that bring about harm. That's where most of my anxiety comes from. Is I get scared about doing the wrong thing, and also have I done the right thing? Do I know myself? A situation happens. I thought I was doing this, but actually, there's vast terrains of my being which are a bit murky and a bit complex. So I unlike the Buddha, I don't know exactly which forces are moving me, which way, which gives a sense of which breeds dis-ease. It brings a certain kind of anxiety that, of course, as a mortal and as a man, I have to work with, and part of the attraction of Buddhahood is complete clarity on that front. Clarity, purity of heart, intention, and awareness that my decisions have been the best possible. Yeah. And then finally, I just want to say something about the colour. I think this is the most important thing, in a way. The colour. Things start to... So, the main association of the whiteness is with death. This is the main association with Vairochana. Vairochana's white is the... It's said that lots of people think that after we die, we are kind of thrown into a vast, terrifying whiteness. Yeah, lots of different traditions seem to say this, and the Buddhist tradition says similarly. There's a vast, terrifying white. We're confronted with a hurricane of whiteness. And this is the world of the in-between state after we die, according to traditions. The Antara Bhava is called. And this is Vairochana's world, apparently. And obviously, well, I do have a friend who I don't know about this. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, how could I? How would I? I do have a friend who's much more advanced in his years of practice, and he firmly has a lot of conviction in this teaching that this is what happens, and he says one of the main things that he trains himself in this life is he's fully convinced that this is what we face when our body stops. Is something in our consciousness is confronted with this vast, terrifying white, this transitional, strange world, place. And he says, he reckons that in this state, ideas are weak. They're far too weak. They don't steer us at all. They just go completely out the window. And that only the most powerful of symbols can be steers in this state. And he considers a lot of his practice in this life a training, a preparation for steering through that state. I find it very, very interesting. And he says that one of the important reasons why symbols are so crucial is that you train your mind, your being, to absorb the symbols. Yeah, so you meditate on the symbols, like Vairochana is a symbol, like the wheel is a symbol, like lions are symbols, and these symbols go very, very deep. They go very, very deep to in our being, and that they then steer us. He hopes that if when he dies, he's a very old man. If when he dies, symbols will bring him back. If he comes back as in a mind, that symbols will bring him back to the Dharma, to the teachings of the Buddha, which is what he values most highly. So he meditates on this fiercely. Yeah, I did. Uh, hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think I'm going to. I think I've said enough now. So I think what we'll do is I'm just going to.